Good morning, everyone. Thank you all
Hey,
so.
good morning. How we doing?
Hey, Dexter, good morning. Good
All
morning.
right.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome, everyone. Please share your name, agency in the chat. We'd love to warm that up. So glad you're here with us today for our quarterly virtual session of Coffee and Quality. And today is a very special Coffee and Quality. We're actually featuring the findings, the process, the takeaways from our case study with College Community and Career. So very excited for you to hear more about their organization, hear how they're using data to inform what they're doing, and then also dive into some of the insights we found from this case study. So with that, if we haven't met before, hello, I'm Jessica Davison. So lovely to meet you. Glad you could join us this morning. Like every Coffee and Quality virtual session, we started off with these ground rules. So these ground rules really help us ensure that Coffee and Quality, this virtual setting, remains a space where people can learn and share and grow together. So a couple of ground rules. This is a safe space to share and learn. So please feel free to lean in virtually, use the chat, come off on mute, share with us questions, thoughts, reactions you're having as you're coming into this space. When we're sharing information in coffee quality, sometimes things are like right on, spot on with what you already know. It's just continuing to reiterate things for you. Other times it's something brand new to you or something that maybe is testing something you thought you really understood that maybe is sounding a little different than what you thought you understood. And that's just life. And so please have an open mind and open heart as you're in this space. That really helps ensure that everyone can feel comfortable participating, sharing their knowledge, sharing their experiences. As always with Coffee and Quality, is it is an invitation, not an obligation. We're just really glad you're here and are going to spend the morning with us, really just geeking out over all of the very cool things of college community career. My last little commercial before we really hand it over to the group to talk more about this is we have a Teams channel. So we have this virtual time when we come together quarterly, but United Way also has a Teams environment where we post resources, trainings, job opportunities. You never know what we're going to post over there on the Coffee and Quality team channel. So please, if you're not a member of that team channel, please share your email in the email chat, and we will add you into the team. It's welcome to everybody. There's also other channels in there that are open to nonprofits just to gather other resources and connect with other nonprofit professionals. So with that, thank you in advance for joining our team channel. So if you're new to Coffee and Quality, we have what we call a case study. It's one of our 7 offerings that we have under the Coffee and Quality umbrella. And so the case study is actually a really unique opportunity for a nonprofit organization. What the nonprofit organization gets to do is they get to, in partnership with United Way and with the Kinder Institute for Urban Research, really dive into their data and help answer a question that they're not able to answer with their own analytical and data know-how internally at their organization. And so this creates this opportunity where they can share with their organization these findings and then bring them back to improve their processes, to improve their data practices, to improve their programming, strengthen the work they're doing to fulfill their mission. But also other nonprofits get to learn from them and take that back into their organization. And so that's the spirit of the case study. And time flies when you're having fun, y'all, because this is our 5th case study. And so very excited that College Community Career is joining the folks that have done this before. And so they've all really reiterated that this is a vulnerable moment for them, that they're sharing their data with some other folks at other organizations. And so just really want to honor them and applaud them for taking this step to really, have others learn from this in this really unique opportunity that is the case study. And so we've done a lot with them through the case study, but one of the things, two big deliverables they get from the case study is this presentation to share out. And then there also will be an accompanying research brief that's the written document that lives on forever, just like the presentation does as well. And so that's what you're all gathered here together today to hear and see and experience. And so thank y'all so much. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Kathy to share a little bit more with us about College Community Career.
Thanks, Jessica. I'm Kathy Rose. I'm the Executive Director of College Community Career. And we were very honored to be selected to do this case study. College Community Career, our mission is to foster a college-going culture with low-income first-generation high school students and families to create and build equity in education. Next. So we serve students starting in the 10th grade, and we go all the way through until college completion. We serve them for 7+ years, depending on how long they take to get it out of college. Most of our students are first generation, meaning their parents didn't attend college in the United States. Our first graduating class in high school was in 2019, which meant that they started graduating college if they completed college in 4 years in 2019. We serve 14 high schools, 13 are in the Houston area, 1 is in West Texas. And again, our population is primarily low-income students and families, and are the first from their family to attend and graduate from college. Next. Our curriculum is built on 4 pillars, obviously the college success piece, but we also do career discovery. We do leadership development with our students and civic engagement. And our vision for our students is to be employed, civically minded college graduate. Next. So we have 4 components of our program. We have our high school program, which we give classes to each of our grade levels, 10th, 11th, and 12th. We do it virtually twice a week. They get to choose which class they attend based on their schedule. We also go to their campus once a grading period. And at the end of their time with us in high school, we do a culmination college decision dinner. It's kind of like a signing athletes do to declare where they're going to college. As they move into college, we have our College Connect meeting. We meet virtually with them during the school year and then in person after each semester. We do a bilingual parent meeting, and we meet with our parents on each grade level once a grading period also to help them understand the college process. And in the summer, we do an 8-week summer program. We do visit colleges, we do different career visits, we do community service, we do a leadership camp, and we do application essays and boot camps, and we also do a financial literacy class for 5 weeks. Next. So just so you can meet some people behind the data, Rebecca is one of our first high school students who graduated in 2019 from A&M Kingsville, and she is now currently working for GM Financial. Next. Rebecca and her mom both participated in the high school and parent meeting. She is also one of our first students. She attended U of H. Her dream was to be a middle school math teacher, which she accomplished. She teaches in middle school that feeds her high school, and she also is serving on our CCC board. Next. And just some things I thought you might enjoy. Here's a little bit of our leadership camp. We make them do a low ropes course. So here are some of the kids doing some things. First of all, getting out in nature. They live in the urban setting, but also challenging themselves on things they didn't think they could accomplish. So the picture on the right, they all have to get on that wooden board together and make it balance and can't touch the ground. So. And next. And then this is just our seniors that this past April for the class of 25 at our signing day where they are ready to go off to college. So, and that's our contact information if you want more. So I think I'm handing it off to Manuel.
I think we handed off to Dan Potter first.
Oh, I'll have
Sorry,
that one.
Dan.
Perfect.
So sorry, Dan.
Oh, no, not a problem. Good morning, everybody. So thank you so much, Kathy, for that overview of your program, and thank you for this opportunity to be working with you here as part of this case study. And Jessica, obviously to you as well. This is our fifth one, and it's always amazing as we go through this process what we learn a little bit differently, new findings and opportunities that present themselves, new challenges that we get to grapple with and learn from and improve upon. And so very, very excited to be here today to share out about our fifth case study working with college community career. So next slide. So just a quick outline for today, our agenda. We're going to start with a little bit of an overview about just the goals of the capstone. Jessica hit on some of these already. We just want to reiterate those. And then we're going to hop into our process a little bit. One of the things that we do with our capstone is while this is sort of an evaluation, it is not your typical evaluation. And so we want to spend a second going through what is the process that we follow. We're going to get into the research questions that we ultimately arrived at with CCC and United Way, talk through our plan of analysis, and then share results. And then we're going to end all of this, obviously, with sort of reflecting on observations and things that have been learned. And so let's start with the goals. So with these case studies, our goals are sort of twofold. On the one hand, there is this very specific goal of working in partnership in tandem with a nonprofit, in this case, the wonderful College Community Career, to sort of tackle, unpack, and then ultimately answer questions they have with their data. And so for this particular case study, we were working with data that they have on the youth that they serve as part of their high school programming, as part of their summer activities, and looking at how these youth interact with the program in high school. What are their sort of this participation with summertime activities? And then how does this engagement and summertime activity behavior, how does that translate into that transition both to college and then that success through college? And so that's going to be our primary focus looking and working with CCC. And then more broadly, sort of stepping back and thinking as we're learning and as we're working through this process, what are some of the insights that we're going to be able to develop and share that move beyond merely this like awesome first goal of supporting CCC and what they're doing to be thinking more broadly about the nonprofit community and the collection and utilization of data. So these are the goals we have with our case studies. Now, when we're talking about our process, we apply what we refer to as a partnership model. And what that partnership model means is that this is not about, oh, Rice had some ideas and we wanted to get some data to do stuff with it. But it really is about bringing organizations together, coming together, the United Way, bringing together CCC, Rice University, so that we're talking, we're learning, we're co-creating a research ideas, agendas, and ultimately research questions. Now, there is some data sharing and some transfer of information that goes on to be able to help us to begin to unpack those questions. And it involves a little bit of a preliminary investigation. And what that sort of looks like is, okay, we thought we were going to be able to do this. We get the data, we're looking through it. Okay, cool, this sounds really good. And here's what we're learning. This one might need a little bit of massaging. And so we go through this research refinement process, again, with the community partner, with CCC and with United Way in this case. Once we really have this shared understanding of what it is we're looking to do, that's where we get to nerd out a little bit here with some data, with some statistics, and really unpack what are we learning, what are we seeing. And so that's our data processing and analysis. But we're not doing it in isolation. There's this ongoing communication, connecting with Jessica, talking with her, sending along questions, getting continuous feedback and reflections from CCC as well, so that this is not about operating within isolation. And so through that, there's these cycles of sharing of results, getting that partner input, revising the analysis plan, revising the approach, better understanding what is this pattern we're seeing. And so all of that results in we're arriving here today and we're going to share some stuff with you all, folks that are in this chat that you may have never seen before, but for all of us that are talking here today, we've seen all this. So there's not a surprise, and that's one of the core components of partnership research is that this is about making sure we're getting research and getting information to the partner in a way that they can use it in a way that's impactful and insightful, not in a way that's gotcha. And so we're sharing these results today as part of a broader dissemination effort, but just wanting to reiterate that there's no surprise findings here because we've already worked with CCC and United Way on that. And so that's the partnership model that we employ as part of this case study. And so next slide, I believe, gets us into our data. Perfect. So before we hand this off to my colleagues, I want to take a moment and pause because if you've followed these case studies to this point, one of the things you'll see is the Kinder Institute has largely been an anchor to those case studies. And I am still, hello, Dan Potter with Kinder Institute, but we had this awesome opportunity emerge this summer where, in addition to being able to, for me to continue to work with United Way and working on these case studies, I got to bring in colleagues from the Masters of Social Policy Evaluation program at Rice University. Our Masters of Social Policy Evaluation is a 1-year, 30 credit hour professional master's program. And the aim of that program is about getting students familiar with cutting edge methods of data analytics, project management, social policy evaluation questions. And so what we're sharing today, is a part of their capstone for that entire program. And so this is a little bit of a different group that we're bringing into this evaluation. And I want to once again extend a very sincere and appreciation to CCC and United Way for being open and receptive to giving this opportunity to us to be able to explore data, to learn and take what we've been covering as part of this program and putting it into action. And so that's all I've got at this point. I want to turn it over to my amazing colleagues as part of the Social Policy Evaluation Program. And again, CCC, thank you so much for this opportunity. And so with that, Manuel, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. As you can see, our first slide provides a snapshot of the students served by CCC across different cohorts from 2014 through 2026. In total, our data set included 2,038 unique students. What stands out in this is the demographic makeup of the students. 62% are female, and over half, about 52%, are multilingual, which means they speak more than one language at home or school. In addition, 75% of students are first generation, meaning their parents did not attend college. Next one, please. On this slide, the next slide highlights the racial, ethnic, and economic backgrounds of CCC students. On the left side, we see the majority, 58%, identified as Hispanic or Latinos, followed by 28% who are African American. Smaller proportions identified as Asian, white, and multiracial. On the right side, we have the family income distribution. More than a quarter of CCC students come from households earnings $20,000 or less, and nearly fall below $40,000 of income a year. This context is essential, as it underscores the mission and importance of CCC's work, which is supporting students who are navigating higher education pathways without a familiar roadmap. And with this, I pass it on to my colleague, Tatiana.
Thank you, Manuel. To begin, I'm going to be going over the patterns of engagement and student demographic factors. Our research question is, what are the patterns of student engagement with CCC's programming during high school? To dive into this question, we also asked within sub-question A, have student engagement patterns differed across cohorts of students, be it that of high school graduation classes? And sub-question B, is involvement with summertime activities related to students' pattern of engagement with CCC's programming in high school? For our analysis plan, we used descriptive statistics to classify students involved with CCC to view their engagement patterns with the program. We focused on students within the cohorts from 2015 to 2024 due to the complete cohort graduation. Analysis was based upon social demographic statistics and cohort for grouping of student engagement. To view the engagement patterns, complete participation are students who have participated within all 3 years of high school programs. Late joiners are students who began after their sophomore year. Early droppers are students who left the program before completion. Irregular, inconclusive, and minimal students were of the smallest groupings. Here, the graphic shows student engagement by cohort. In view of the three most notable engagement trends, it shows that the most common engagement trend is of complete participation in each cohort, with the exception of 2020. A note here is to recognize the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic within 2020. Students within the late joiners trend have increased across cohort timelines, with the peak percentage in 2023. Early droppers have remained relatively consistent at 1/3 since 2017. Next slide, please. Here we will view the student participation patterns throughout CCC's summer activities with the program's 4 pillars: college success, career discovery, leadership development, and civic engagement. Participation patterns within CC programs were compared with the aligned summer activities to determine relation of patterns. Next slide, please. Here we will view the participation patterns within the involvement of college success activities during the summer. As we can see, the three most prevalent patterns are of complete participation, late joiners, and early droppers once again. Our graphic here is due to the findings that college success was the most common summer activity for students. The other 3 pillars, career discovery, leadership development, and civic engagement, showed similar patterns of engagement. Here we can see that the students who engaged in more summer activities were more likely to have been classified as a complete participant. A deeper dive shows that students who participated in 6 or more activities had an 81% likelihood to be within the pattern of complete participation. Awesome. To restate the pattern of student engagements within CCC, we analyzed 6 patterns of engagement within CCC programming during high school, with the most common being that of complete participation overall. In relation to research question 1, sub-question A, have student engagement patterns differed across cohorts? We saw that each cohort had a complete participation as the highest throughout the timeline, with the exception of 2020. Here, there is an increase in students joining the program later, but completing as well. Early droppers remain constant at 1/3, regardless of the year. In sub-question B, the involvement of summertime activities related to student patterns of engagement with CCC programming in high school showed that participating in summer activities lead to completing the CCC program fully during high school engagement periods. From here on, I'm going to be passing it over to my colleague, Ikra.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. Good morning, everybody. So in this section, I'll be sharing findings from our analysis looking at what predicts college enrollment for CCC youth. So the central question driving this part of our work was simple. What percentage of CCC youth enrolled in college after graduating from high school? But we also wanted to go deeper, so we broke it down into sub-questions, which was, does college going differ across groups of students during high school? Do students' high school engagement patterns of complete participation, joining late or dropping early, or having minimal engagement has anything to do with college going? Or is involvement with summertime activities related to students' college going in any way? So these are the pieces that help us tell not just how many students, but also why and for whom CCC's programming is working. Next slide. Yeah, so for the analysis plan, we had to determine college going and define it. So we calculated the number of students who enrolled in college after high school and created a binary variable, which was coded as 0 if the students did not go to college. And we considered all the pathways that they might have taken other than going to college. So if they dropped out of high school, graduated, and enlisted in the military program, received a for-profit certification only, or did not enroll in college, all of that was concluded as 0. And the students who went to college were coded as 1. That means if they enrolled in a 2-year or 4-year college after high school, or students who are currently enrolled, graduated, and those who had stopped out of college. So we only considered the cohort between 2015 to 2023 and restricted the sample cohorts with adequate time to go to college in the data. And for the analytical approach, we tried to understand the measure of college going. So we started by looking at descriptive statistics, which was the simple percentages that tell us out of all of students how many went to college across the patterns of engagement with CCC and their social demographics. That gave us a clear baseline picture of the characteristics of the data in terms of percentages, averages, and means. But The descriptive stats tell part of the story. So to dig deeper, we use logistic regression model, which of the binary outcome of college going, which allowed us to predict the probability of college going by isolating the effective factors of program engagement and student characteristics. And the results were reported as predicted probabilities. So let's just try and understand what is predicted probability. In statistic analysis, predicted probability is a quantified likelihood of an event occurring. In the context of our analysis, predicted probability indicates the chance that a student will experience a particular outcome based on the patterns that are observed throughout the data set. So when we show you a predicted probability of a measure, think of it as given what we've seen in the data, how likely it is that a student will with certain characteristics will go to college. So a value close to 1 or 100% means very likely, and a value close to 0 or 0% means very unlikely. So that now that we know slightly about predicted probabilities, let's apply to our first big question, which was across all CCC students, what's the predicted probability of college going? And the answer is 86.5%. What does that mean? It means that if you had 100 CCC students, about 87 of them would go on to college. This is a big number, and it's an exciting one. And it's just the start because it gets more interesting when we break it down by engagement, demographics, and summer activities. So when we split the data by engagement groups, the story becomes clear. Students who remain in the program through the end of high school have the highest likelihood of going to college, regardless of when they started. So as you can see in the chart, highest probability of college going among complete participants is seen and late joiners is seen. So students who disengaged in the program prior to finishing high school had lower predicted probabilities as compared to those who had completed the program. The takeaway here is simple, that staying with the program through high school is strongly associated with going to college. Even if you join late, if you stick with the program, you're highly likely to end up at college. So we were very keen to see if summer activities had any impact on college going. So we created a summer activities measure. To create the summer activities measure, all the activities that student could participate in were summed together regardless of the program they were aligned with. So it didn't matter if they attended a civic engagement event or a leadership development event, as long as they were participating. So it turned out that summer activities were among the strongest predictors of college enrollment. What that means is that students who participated in more CCC summer activities were significantly more likely to enroll at college. So students, if you see in the chart, who completed 6 or more activities were more likely to go to college than students who completed 0 activities. So while summer participation clearly strengthens outcomes, the absence of it doesn't necessarily indicate failure either for the students, because even for students who participated in 0 summer activities, we see in the chart that they have an 83% likelihood of going to college. This was a lower likelihood compared to those who engaged in 6 or more summer activities, but still points to a shared general level of college going success for students engaging in CCC. Next. So finally, when we looked at the cohorts over time, we saw an upward trend. So you can see in the chart as well, from 2018 to 2023, the predicted probability of college going increased by nearly 20 percentage points, rising from 76% in the earlier cohorts to 97% in the most recent cohort. So starting back in 2018, there is an incremental ongoing success in college community career, having more and more students getting into college. Next slide. So, and that brings us to the highlight of the most recent cohort, which is the class of 2023, that the predicted probability of college going in the cohort of 2023 was 97%. That's nearly every student CCC worked with that year successfully transitioning into college. So if 86.5% of college enrollment across all years was exciting, 97% for the latest cohort is a clear sign that CCC is headed in the right direction in supporting students to get into college. And to summarize the big question, which was the total percentage of students enrolled in college after high school, and the answer is most CCC students enroll in college after And that number has increased recently to 97% in the 2023 cohort. And college going was more likely for students in the complete participation and late joiner group than for students in the early dropper or minimal group. And with that finding, my section is concluded. I'll hand it over to my colleague, Jaslyn.
Thank you, Ikra, for the introduction. From here, I will talk about predicted college outcomes for CCC students and how those outcomes relate to program engagement, summer activity participation, and cohort year. For our third group of research questions, we asked the following. What percentage of CCC youth graduate with a 2 or 4 year degree? Does college graduation differ across groups of students or over time? Do high school engagement patterns predict college graduation? And finally, is involvement with summertime activities related to students' college graduation? These questions help us understand where CCC currently has a strong impact and where there may be opportunities to build upon that success. Next slide. Thank you. To explore these questions, we used descriptive statistics to categorize students by their graduation status. We then applied multinomial logistic regression to assess the relationship between key predictors such as high school patterns of engagement within CCC and college graduation status. The patterns of engagement were divided into 5 categories. Those who graduated with a 4-year degree, those who earned an associate's degree, those currently enrolled, those no longer enrolled, and students who didn't attend college at all. The analysis focused on cohorts from 2015 to 2023 using college enrollment and completion data as of spring 2024. By structuring the data this way, we were able to examine which students completed college while capturing those still in progress or at risk of not graduating. Overall, this method provided a more complete picture of how program participation during high school might shape post-secondary outcomes. Next slide, thank you. When looking across the full sample of CCC students from 2015 to 2023, we found that just over 18% had received a 4-year degree and around 5% had received a 2-year degree. Overall, these percentages represent important progress for a population that often faces significant barriers to accessing and completing higher education. We then found predicted graduation outcomes by student engagement levels. Students within the complete participation category, or students who showed engagement across 3 years of high school, had a 31% likelihood of receiving a 4-year degree. In contrast, students in the minimal category, or students who only had 1 year of engagement, had a 35% likelihood of never attending college. Lastly, early droppers and late joiners both had a 38% likelihood of exiting college before finishing. These results suggest that sustained engagement with CCC is linked to stronger college outcomes. In previous sections, we saw that students who participated in more summer activities were more likely to be consistently engaged, and those with consistent engagement had the strongest college-going outcomes. When we examined which type of summer activities were most impactful towards long-term success, civic engagement stood out. Specifically, we found that students who participated in 3 or more civic engagement events during high school had a 39% predicted likelihood of completing a 4-year degree. This finding highlights civic engagement as a promising area for strengthening programming and supporting students on their paths to degree completion. It also reinforces the idea that high-frequency, wide-ranging involvement in CCC supports student long-term educational success. When we looked at predicted graduation outcomes across different CCC cohorts, the 2017 group stood out. Students from this cohort had the highest predicted rate of 4-year degree completion at 43%. This result is not surprising when we think about the time it takes to complete a bachelor's degree. Students in the 2017 cohort have had several years since high school to progress through their college programs, which means more of them have had the opportunity to reach graduation. This finding highlights the importance of looking at outcomes over time because newer cohorts are often still working towards their degrees. For example, the 2023 cohort had the highest predicted likelihood of still being enrolled in college at 79%, reflecting that these students are still in the midst of their collegiate journeys. Since they graduated from high school in recent years, most have not had the opportunity to complete a bachelor's degree, which typically takes 4 or more years. This highlights that most students in the cohort are engaged in progressing towards their goals. Continued tracking of this group over the next several years will provide a clearer picture of their eventual graduation outcomes. Based on the patterns we see with earlier cohorts, there is reason to be optimistic that many of these students will transition from current enrollment to degree completion as they move further along in their college pathways. So to summarize, CCC students are actively progressing through college, with older cohorts more likely to have already earned degrees and newer cohorts still enrolled. Most importantly, we found that CCC students who were fully engaged throughout high school were most likely to complete a four-year degree. These findings suggest that consistent and sustained engagement during high school plays a crucial role in college success. And that concludes my section, so now I'm going to hand it back off to Kathy.
Thanks. Thank y'all so much. I mean, we gave you so much data. I don't know how you came up with all of it and processed it. So thank you so much. It was very insightful. Some of the key takeaways that we had as an organization, we kind of categorized it. So the attitude toward collecting and using data, and what we need to, our key takeaway is that everyone from the board to the staff to the students communicating their information, everyone has to be collecting our data and doing it in the same manner. Data is telling our story, and what I really appreciated from Kinder and the students is that they also knew that they were students, and so they had a face to the number, which was very nice and comforting. The other takeaway we had is that collecting data is everyone's responsibility in the organization. It's just not mine or Tomas or the college piece. It's everybody leads to having this successful story told. And again, data isn't just the numbers. There are students and their stories behind the numbers. The other thing we did is consistency in data entry, that we need to be collecting the data consistently over all of our different forms, so that it can be analyzed, and it's not continuously needing to be cleaned, so that it can be analyzed. We also, after doing a lot with the Coffee and Quality program, created a data dictionary to use, and we need to make that robust and keep adding to it. And then we also need to train everybody how to consistently input data, and that how important it is as they come on as new staff, how important it is to follow through with collecting that data. Next. We also, the categorization of data and engagement, that everybody that is collecting the data, we need to have the policies and procedures in place. And that we need to set up how to categorize our data, especially when we're doing new programs, and that it follows the same way of collection as our programs are already in place. And that we also need to go back now after all of this and look at our data to make sure that it is following the same way we're collecting, and all the rules are in place. Because when you start an organization, like back in 2013, it was more telling the story about a student rather than doing the data, and now it's data that tells your story. So we need to go back and make sure our data is all cleaned and in the same way. The other takeaway for us was we had been pretty adamant you join in the 10th grade. So we had a few districts that asked us to have students join late. So a late joiner, as we categorize them now, was interesting to us, and we know that we have to get them engaged in the program. But we also had a sense that we had that same consistent early dropper after 10th grade. A lot of kids say, college isn't for us. And so that engagement there was something that we had intuitively known maybe, but now it's in the data for us and analyzed. Next slide. So some other things, sometimes there's things out of our control, like we didn't have any control over the pandemic. And we went from an in-person class to a Zoom class, so we changed our model a little bit. But being aware how that pandemic is affecting our data. Also, some changes out of our control are federal or funding policies or financial aid policies. Those are out of our control, but we still try and help our students navigate that. And also, there's a changing landscape from when we started about post-secondary degrees and how to attain that and what that looks like. Um, and then motivating a student to graduate 4 years, go to college for 4 years and have that college going behavior. There's some things outside, whether it's outside influence or family influence, or maybe just if they're going to stay in the country or not. Those are things that are out of our control. Next. So I'm going to hand it back over to Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kathy. Yes, many things out of our control. And so what are those, like including those and then takeaway is just that we're all in the same boat reality, that there are some things that are just beyond your control. But that impacts your programming, it impacts the work that you're doing. So lifting it up so we know we're not alone in that space. Again, thank you so much for having College Community Career participate in this and really share your takeaways. You came into this with so much data. You had processes in place, you had your purple sheet, you had the way you were tracking their attendance across the pillars. So you had all of that established. And for us, when we're trying to find the right organization to participate in the case study, that's what we're looking for. Who's got some data practices already established, and then who's got this commitment to use the information, use their data to improve the work that they're doing. And that was like such a hallmark of your organization. So thank you. Thank you for that. And I appreciate you shining a light on things you're going to do to continue to improve your practices, your programming. But I also want to shine a big old flashlight on things other nonprofits can take away from this. There were some golden gems you were sharing, but just to shine a light onto 3 of them. And you said it too. You said, let's do things in the same manner. Like we have different people touching our data. We have some staff, we have some volunteers. I think I heard you mention some point you had a volunteer, an intern. And then we also have students. We have the people whose information this is giving us information. And so let's all do this the same way. And when we have everyone kind of coming in and touching our data and providing it to us, let's set aside the time to spot check that we have things that are accurate there, that maybe it was entered in as 1901 when it should have been 2001. I mean, let's just double check those dates, right? Like it's the little things there of the spot checking that if you know you're doing manual data entry, that you have that process in place to go back and do that. I find that to be like the ticket to being kind to your future self, because months are going to go past, you're going to go back into that file and you're going to be like, why did we not check this to make sure we had all of that information there? And so taking the time to spot check and find the right way in the process that your organization wants to spot check, and looking at your data, looking at those trends to know where is it usually the messiest spot that we have that we need to go back in and make sure that we are cleaning it as we go. Because that's another aspect of this, another big takeaway. And so cleaning your data as you go, cleaning is part of the process. And so if we can all like stack hands on that, that'll help set us up for success and be kind to our future selves. But a big aspect to that for other organizations is let's put the date and time, so timestamp, if you will, when you're adding in data elements, data entry points into your data files. This is a nice way to be kind to your future self so you can see the trends and see the changes as you go on with your clients, especially if you're looking at clients over a long period of time. There's that one time something happened, but then maybe it happens again in a month or 3 months, or in the college community career example, when you have different summer activities, really placing that timestamp on that And then also when you're looking at where are they now in their college trajectory? Have they completed college? Are they still enrolled? Time stamping each time we go back into that file and looking at it. It's kind of that in the college community career example where that comes up, but that could come up in so many other different programs, so many different other organizations. And so considering for you, when do we need to timestamp something? I know that's something that we talk a lot about internally at United Way for some of our work as well. The other one, and this is, a big aspect when we think about what's our strategy for collecting and using data, it's collect what matters for your support, for your impact. College Community Career had a lot of data, and it all did matter for what they were doing and what they're trying to track across their 4 pillars. There were a couple of things in our early stage of the kickoff that, if we just knew if they took algebra at a certain time point in their college, in their high school path, like that would be really helpful to know. And so, that would have taken a while to try to track down through transcripts that just was not in the cards for this 6 months experience. It sounded really appealing at the beginning, but it just was not in the cards. But I think that leveled up this note of what matters, collect what matters. And if that's something that matters to you and you're going to use that information, find a way to incorporate it. And so I think that's big takeaways that we have for other organizations that we would love for you to consider as you think of the work you're doing and all of that. And so as we go on, I want to now hear from folks. I see some questions already coming in the chat. And so gonna help moderate a couple of these. So the first one I see, hello, Mr. Wynn, great to see you. So his question is, how do you validate the accuracy of your predictive model? How accurate is it percent tolerance? So that's going to you. Thanks, Dan, unmuting already.
Yeah, so one of the things that we were doing with all of our modeling procedures was doing things in an incremental way. And so what that means is starting out with descriptive analyses to try to look and see what are the patterns that we were observing, and then moving the model forward to add additional control variables, add additional covariates to determine whether or not additional patterns held up over, successive, more rigorous model specifications, or if the classic sort of you explain an association away. And so with each of the models that we were showing here, these models contained a variety of different control variables that were included. And in addition to that, we tried a variety of different specifications, sometimes changing around the reference group that we were looking at to see, oh, we detected this difference here. If we switch up some of these different reference groups, does that association kind of vanish in front of our eyes, or do you sort of continue to see it? And so that there was that sort of like ongoing testing of the models just to make sure that even if we looked at it from a few different directions and a few different angles, again, starting very descriptively and working up to like an iterative multinomial logistic regression approach, that we were seeing the same story emerging at the end of the day. And then in terms of the accuracy piece, we were largely relying on pseudo R-squared statistics to indicate whether or not our model was fitting well-ish or not super well. And as is the case with most logistic regression models in your pseudo R-squared, you're not typically seeing R, like with linear models, you can sometimes get your R-squared up to 0.4 or 0.5 if you've got some really heavy hitters in as your control variables and other covariates. With pseudo R-squareds and logistic regression, you're just not typically getting your model to be that super well predictive, but we were regularly seeing the pseudo R-squared getting out of the 0.0s to be the 0.1s or even 0.2, I think at one point. And so there's, the classic criticism is available that there are omitted variables that, were they to be included, may offer some additional insights and additional clarification on the relationships that exist. But again, with the sort of process and approach that we were using, felt confident that some of these results that we're sharing out here today, they stood up under a variety of different testing scenarios, a variety of different control variables. And so, but that would have been our process, is sort of this descriptive all the way through the more sophisticated analyses.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. There's a couple other questions in the chat, but I want to ask a side question to Kathy. Because I think we had folks keep joining in, and so I got a question about your students. If you can, because you hit this at the top, but do you have academic requirements for your students for who participates, excuse me? For example, is there an academic requirement for students to participate? It's like only A students, only C students, anything like that you can share?
Yeah, so our students have to have a 2.8 GPA and they have to be on the graduation plan. It's called the foundation plan with endorsements, which allows a student going that's in high school to go into a 4-year college directly. And so they'll graduate with 26 credits.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Kathy. I'm going to split this next question between the two groups because it's a thing. It was something in this, and I know it's very much a concept if you are in this college readiness space. So from Tiffany, did you rely only on NSC data for college matriculation?
So we do run the National Student Clearinghouse. It's a clearinghouse that you can put in a student's name and birthday, and they'll tell you where they are progressing through. But we also rely on the student and their progress and knowing them, because some of the schools, depending on a student's status, won't report out that information on National Student Clearinghouse. It's a minority of our students, but it's still there. So we do both.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And then splitting the difference on the other side, because I know that was a lot of the data that y'all looked at, and especially for that third question, even into like a little bit of the first question. But can you share what are your data management and data mining tools that y'all used for this? I'm sure that's to the students. Yeah.
Are you asking me?
I think that one's
Or
actually to the students.
Dan?
The data mining tools. Yeah. Like I think what did y'all use for analyzing the data?
Who wants to
Rajat?
jump in on that one?
Jaslyn, you're right in my view. So you won the lucky straw. If you could share.
So when you say data mining tool, you mean like just how we had all the data organized and everything?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So the kind of unpacking, like, how did we go from these files that showed up from CCC into these final results? Like, what were the different tools that we were using?
Oh, okay. So the files arrived to us with Excel. So that took a lot of cleaning, pretty much just reformatting it. And then also there were a couple times for example, I used VBA in order to reformat it as well. And then we took those files and put them in Stata, and then that allowed us to kind of keep everything uh, in a better position, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that there goes that, like, how do we take this raw data and analyze it to have these findings? And so thank you for shining light on that. I love the questions that are coming in. One of the questions I have, and Kathy, you mentioned it and you've talked a little bit about it, and I know it was something that they mentioned too as well with the MSPE program students, is the human side of the data, the people that this data represents. And so I guess I'm curious from your perspective, how do you balance the human side of your mission with the increasing expectation to demonstrate impact through data? How do you navigate that?
That's a great question. Um, I think that we try really hard that we have a relationship with our students and that we're constantly communicating with our students and our parents. We do have a texting platform that we can communicate with both students and parents. When we meet in person, we make sure that we talk to them, see how they're doing, kind of the social emotional side of it that you can't collect in data. But eventually it has to come down like, did they go to college or not? Did they take the SAT or not? So there's some data side to it. And it is tricky because some of them have a heartbreaking story, but then how can we connect them to services? to help them through that or help them, their family through that, so they can stay on the path that they want with college. And so, like, the United Way has an integrated client journey that we can help them through. Some of the community centers have programs for them. How can we get them to learn about money and be responsible with financial literacy courses for them and themselves? So trying to anticipate some of their needs to help them so that they can be successful.
Love that. Thank you. I also appreciate the call out to the texting platform. And that's a question. What's the texting platform that y'all use to communicate with students and parents?
Yeah, so we use a platform called Signal Vine, or it's Modern Campus now. It was bought out, and we students who join our program, join in 10th grade, they can, and we put their parents in the same platform. If they are somebody that drops our program, and they say, I don't, don't text me, as long as their number is in our kind of Rolodex, if you refer to an old-fashioned term, they can still text us. They won't get mass texting from us, but they can contact us. So something happened, they dropped out, now they want to go back to college, they can text us, and we will receive that, and then we can start that conversation again.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing about how you utilize that texting platform too. Feel like that was like an ad for Signal for your platform, but that's all good. Sharing is caring. And while we're like kind of digging deep on different resources, platforms people are using, I'm also really curious from the analysis side. And so this question tosses to the students. How did you decide which analysis to run or which variables to prioritize? Like, y'all got a lot of data. There was a lot of questions kind of flying out. And so curious, just how did y'all like balance the rigor that can come from analyzing data with what was important to college community career?
I can take on that question if you don't mind. We basically began with extensive data curation process. This involved reviewing and standardizing participation records all the way from 2015 to 2024. It was drawn from multiple Excel files provided by CCC. Then we merged them into files into master data sets using unique identifiers like the first name, last name, and student ID. Then from there, we created annual participation flags like 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, allowing us to classify each student engagement into one of 6 categories that we mentioned, like complete participation, late joiner, and early droppers. Then we also integrated a clean demographic data like race, ethnicity, income, first generation, and multilingual status, and merged them into summer program records, categorized by CCC 4 pillars. The final product was basically a clean, standardized data set ready for multinomial regression, and a little bit of deeper cohort analysis. This was very meticulous and comprehensive work that basically allowed us to ensure consistency and reliability.
Thank you. Thank you. I was looking to see if any of your colleagues were going to unmute and add in and chime in.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and add. Our priority was basically just to not just answer whatever data that we had, but also what CCC primarily wanted. And that kind of like guided our analysis plan. And basically, we prioritized variables that were both meaningful for CCC and for us as well to give out the answers for the questions that they had. So just wanted to add that, even if we had all the data, it was very important to us that what CCC wanted to like understand and identify for their data.
Thank you. I want to unpack that just a second too, because the way you described the research question and the subset questions, I was like, oh, of course, like what's our impact? Okay, cool. But like, what are the layers of our impact we want to understand? And so if you like, what advice would you give to someone who's really trying to understand the layers of their impact and just starting with like the question and then the subset of questions that can follow?
I mean, that's a great thought. And I would just, emphasize on focusing on the overall output that, comes out of the data and not just what we are already seeing or we are expecting to see. So it has a lot to do with what comes out. So yeah, I'll just add that.
I love that. I always look for gaps to kind of dig deeper into stuff. I love missing data, actually. It tells us a lot.
Yeah.
Um, Dan, for you, anything to add on that? I mean, I feel like you you look at research questions all day long, and this concept of like getting a good subset of questions, so you're really drilling in. Like, what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to dig into that space?
So sort of echo Ikra for a second here. Jump to the end. Really, where are you trying to go? What are you trying to know? And if you start there, you can work your way backwards, identifying, okay, then what is the information that I need to bring into that model that's going to shine the light on the thing I'm trying to know? And then to sort of go back to the statistics question earlier, once you've identified, okay, this is the key. I mean, in stats term, you talk about it as a key independent variable, right? The key predictor. But then you've got a lot of other things that you have in your data that can sometimes just simply be noise and a lot, statistics will help reveal some of that. Other times, there'll be other variables that are important to consider, but they're not necessarily the thing you're supposed to focus on when you get to that ultimate conclusion. And so, and part of that is both a statistical answer, and then there's also sort of a conceptual answer behind it as well. An example with CCC is think about the students that they serve. That those, we had that one slide towards the beginning that Manuel shared, which was talking about the income levels of these students. And the bottom income level was something like less than $20,000, and the top income level was $50,000 or more. It doesn't matter what group your student belongs to, that is a student coming out of an income constrained household. And so even if you identify, oh, there's a little bit of a difference by income, we're not comparing people that are living at or above, the poverty line with people coming from households making 250 or more. We're talking about students that are coming from a shared similar sort of socioeconomic space. And so that doesn't mean not to consider it. I double negative that for you there. So it's not to say that you wouldn't consider income as part of your equation, your model, your investigation. But when you are, again, it's that take the step back moment. If I found something here, what is that really signaling if I've got this sort of specific targeted group of individuals that we're trying to work with? And so that just becomes kind of this conceptual balance to things as well. And so, yeah, again, start at the end, figure out what are the key pieces you want to bring in there to make sure you're getting that information to answer that key question you're after. What are other things that you're going to want to consider? What of those are important to potentially talk about? And what of them just need to be there, but they don't necessarily need to be something that gets highlighted and elevated forward?
Yeah, thank you so much for adding that additional context into this. I think this is something we can often grapple with when we're just thinking high level, what's our impact? And so love the advice from both of y'all. We have another question in the chat. And so I want to ask this one, Kathy, would love to hear from you on this because it's related to missing data and gaps. Did you all learn something that you weren't expecting? Any unexpected or unintended outcomes or results that you found yourself with during the case study?
It's a great question. I think that one of the things for missing data, when you look at your data all the time, and we had one, so we always collect. We have like student number, last name, first name, birthday. We left off student number on one of our main sheets that they were going to use to analyze our data. So we had to go back and put those all in. So that was a good lesson we learned. We were missing that data. I think the other thing, the gaps or some of the trends that we learned, we thought that we would see a little bit of a dip during the COVID. And really one of the graphs that they had, the dip was in like 17, which it follows the political cycle versus the COVID cycle, which we thought. So that was interesting to us. So in looking forward, that we're probably going to see that again. That's a good cycle to know about. And then these latecomers, I think, was another analysis that we hadn't really looked at. We had people that had always asked us to join late, but we're like, I'm not sure. But as they've joined and we've put really rigorous things in place to make sure that they catch up to our students that have started in 10th grade, and we're intentional about it, that they can have the same outcomes. And so that was something that with this study that we saw, and that was really interesting to us.
Thank you so much for sharing that. This next question too comes to you as well. So do you have a roadmap to evolve your data tools to support more proactive cohort tracking over time? Through this experience, have you thought more about that?
That's a great question. Yes, we have been trying very hard to be consistent and to make sure all of our data is collected and do it at the moment rather than try and go back and do it. I will shout out to Jessica and her team, starting Coffee and Quality, maybe a year and a half ago. She had talked to us about cleaning our data as a cohort, cleaning our data. So we had started doing that, but being really consistent, like, if we're talking about a school's name, are we talking about University of Texas at San Antonio, UTSA, UT SA, all of that, just trying to be really consistent in doing that and having those kind of that data dictionary there so that we can be better at the next time we synthesize our data.
Thanks, Kathy. In that too, can you share if data is being collected on the reason why the students drop off the program?
We don't really have we had an exit survey we sent out to them, but they never really filled it out because they were out. If most of the time our feedback, we don't specifically code them the reason why, but most of the time it's they don't have the grades. Like they've decided they're not taking Algebra 2, which Dan talked about, or they've decided that the career and technical piece is what they want to do. They want to do a trade, which is great. We're not saying college is for everybody, but they don't need our help in navigating the college process.
Awesome, thank you. And then another tool share question for you, Kathy. And then I'm gonna toss a question over to the students because I'm gonna take a step back with them. But Kathy, Tomas got it for you. So generally, the question was, what's the survey tool they use? And they generally use Google Form and SurveyMonkey. So thank you for that. I love all these resources we're sharing today. This has been such an active Q&A. I love it. But I would love to take a step back with the students. And so as Dan mentioned, this was a very special case study and that it was a capstone for the Master's in Social Policy Evaluation program at Rice University. Hopefully one of my friends from Rice University can drop the link in the chat to that program, as I know a lot of folks who come to Coffee and Quality are looking for formal training programs. And I'm curious for y'all, for the MSPE program, the students, how did working on this case study help you bridge what you've been learning in your program, your academic program, with real world work of data and evaluation in a nonprofit setting? Because I got to say, y'all got a big old healthy, like froyo dose of nonprofit data with College Community Career. I prefer froyo. That's why it was froyo instead of ice cream. I digress. To y'all.
I can answer that. It was a great experience to be able to put our lessons from the program to real world use because it's one thing to be presented with the situation in the classroom. And for example, being asked, what method would you use to evaluate this in an efficient manner? But once you come into contact with data based on real people that's been input also by real people, it begins to tell a story and provide situational context that you normally wouldn't have received if you were solely looking at data through an academic lens. You also become much more aware of the importance of not only the context, but how to convey the context to others in a meaningful and productive manner.
Yeah, and great. Yeah. So I'll just echo with Jaslyn on that. And it was absolutely amazing because it just not only allowed me to think of data as like this heap of sheet to work on, but to just go deeper and see how we are analyzing it and what we are looking in terms of the answers that we want to find out. And just to work with a real world nonprofit, it was absolutely amazing in terms of learning how they collect data, because like this is not just random numbers, these are real people and real human lives that we are kind of like, impacting by the numbers that we find out eventually, right? So identifying the complex methods were absolutely, uh, informational for me. And one of the experiences was that, when we were doing the summertime activities, categorization, we had the opportunity to kind of like think of like students who did 0 activities, 1 or 2 activities, or 3 or more activities, right? And we could have stopped over there. But we went on and we divided and categorized it up until 6 or more activities, because a student who did 6 or more activities is fundamentally different than a student who did 1 or 2 activities. So not just, looking at it that, let's just divide in terms of categories, but actually go deeper to get those answers and allow the representation of all the students in the best way possible.
That's such a great note too of like what you really get to do when it's like real data in a real world context rather than, I love me a good like test example, but what it looks like in the academic setting or even in a group activity kind of scenario world. So thank you all so much. I don't see any more questions coming in, so I do want to ask Kathy one more last question, if I may. And that question is because you actually are the Chief Executive Officer, the CEO of College Community Career. And so from your perspective as a leader, how do you nurture the importance of collecting and using data across your organization?
Great question. I think when we first started, we did a little bit of collecting of data, but as a CEO, I guess, and you started to grant write and you started to get asked questions out in the public, like, what are you doing? The importance of the data became more and more important. It wasn't just telling a student about like Rebecca and telling her story and saying, oh, she did great, she graduated, yay us. We had to really get down and collect what was important. I think in this exercise, we collected a lot of data. Is it all important or is it not? And I think over time, the same questions are asked over and over. And so that's kind of where we have collected data. Trying to emphasize in every meeting, and I'm sure my team that's on here could say, yes, she always says, collect the data, put the data in. I'm going to check the data. We report the data out to our schools. To our board. And so just really being persistent on saying we need to collect the data. So, and I just want to kind of say thank you to all of you. We came in and it is scary. I'll say to nonprofits, it's scary to give your data over and say, see what you find. And you all did such an amazing job. I really can't thank you enough for treating us and our students with such care, and allowing us to be vulnerable, but not making it like pointing at us and saying, you know, like this is horrible or this is good. You always had such a positive spin on everything, and really never did give us negative feedback on anything, which is, you know, a scary moment. You don't know if you're going to get that or not. And so thank you, thank you for all that you did. I'm very, very grateful.
Thank you. I think that's the best note to wrap us up on. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you. Cannot say that enough to Kathy, College Community Career, as well as to the students, to Dan Potter with Kinder Institute for all of their work in this case study, bringing this to life through the process, into the takeaways and recommendations. And so, as always, your feedback is a gift. Please share with us what you would like to see in future Coffee and Quality quarterly virtual sessions, as well as please join us for our November Coffee and Quality quarterly session, where we will be talking about the wonderful one source of truth when it comes to having different data systems. And so very excited for y'all to meet with and hear from Alberto Espinoza on that topic in November. So please plan to attend RSVP, save that morning for Coffee and Quality. So with that, again, thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again at a future Coffee and Quality. Thank you.